I also dreamed to be a doctor, and there was a little girl, actually one of Keegan's dear friends. She was backed over by a grocery delivery van growing up in our little town, and she was seriously injured. And the posse of kids that lived on our street, there was like 30 of us. We used to go every day after school to the hospital. We would knock on the window and make sure that she was doing okay. And then eventually the doctors and nurses let us in to go visit, and a little bit at a time we got to see her get better. And for me, that was a really pivotal moment in my life where I was really inspired that someday I want to do that job. So as I was dreaming and playing in Olympic Games, I was also planning my life after hockey, because as women's female hockey players didn't make a lot of money playing the game, I knew I had to have a life after. So what was my thing going to be? So what I used to do, I could never sleep after hockey games. We played with the national team. We trained right here in Calgary at Father David Bauer for many, many years. Played games, and after games, when my teammates would go out, I would walk across the street to the Foothills Hospital, and I would spend 3 or 4 hours over many years shadowing one of my dear friends who is a very senior emergency physician. And I was able to do this because I was doing my bachelor degree, my master degree, and so I wanted to see if this was something that I wanted to do. And so over many years, I was able to see, yes, this is something I really like, but I also got to see a lot of people having the worst day or night of their lives. And so when I finally got into medical school, it was a tough grind to get there. My friend sent me a text and she said, "Congratulations, you finally made it." I was 38 years old at this time. And she said, "You finally made it. Why don't you come in after the orientation and do a shift with me? You can actually start to do some stuff." So I said, okay, and went to the orientation at the morning, walked down the hallway to the emergency room of the Foothills Hospital, and not 5 minutes in, we got a call from Critical that fire and EMS had found a young man right out here, down on the C train. People had thought that he was sleeping, but they had suspected that he had actually overdosed. And so they were working on him for many minutes. They weren't sure how long he was down for, but that they were bringing him in. So my friend got off the phone, she turned to me, and she said, "Hayley, welcome to the first day of medicine. You're going to do CPR. Get a gown, glove, and mask on, because he's going to be here in about 5 minutes." And in that instant, I had seen this movie, honestly, probably hundreds of times by this point, because we have an opioid crisis in our country right now. But I had never laid hands on another human being at this point. And so what happened to me is I actually totally panicked. My heart rate probably went to like 160 beats a minute. A million thoughts went through my head, like, why didn't I just stick to hockey? This was a very, this is a totally bad idea. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. This is day one, a million things. But I was trained to do CPR. And so as I fumbled to put my hair in a ponytail, get all the PPE on, my friend walked over to me and she said, tapped me on the shoulder, and she just very quietly said, "And I want you to know that he's been down a long time. I don't think he's going to make it, but we're going to do everything we can. So I just want you to be prepared." And so I took a big breath, and as I put my hair in a ponytail, something came over me, which I had done this thousands of times playing hockey, put my hair in a ponytail. And I was actually able to kind of get a hold of myself, and I remember saying to myself, for God's sakes, this isn't the Olympic gold medal final. 30-2, staying alive. You have one job to do, just do your job. Play your role. 10 other people in this room are going to do theirs. And so as they brought him in, I stepped up on the stool, and for the next 40 minutes with 2 other people, I traded in and out CPR while the more senior people in the room worked to save his life. And as I was standing over top of him, looking at him, he was about 19, 20 years old. He was about the same age as my son, could have been my son. And I'm thinking to myself, your poor mother, what is your story? Why did it come to this? A million thoughts going through my mind. The senior physician at the head of the bed is saying, "Good job, Hayley, just keep going," as he's done it a million times, kind of keeping me on the rails. And at around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, my friend turned to me and said, "Hayley, stop CPR." And I did. And she said, "Okay, we have to pronounce it. He's passed away." And that was it. That was a hell of a first day of med school. And I remember the team moves on very fast because there was actually another one coming in just a few minutes later. But for me, it was the first time that I had ever laid hands on another human being like that. And so I remember just standing over top of this young man, a million thoughts flooding through my brain, and then I put my arm on his arm, and I said, I don't know where you're going, but I hope it's a good place. And I walked away, and that was it. And what I learned that day in medicine on my first day of medical school, what I knew as an athlete was I knew about how to be the best in the world. We did it for a long time. We won a lot of Olympic medals, did a lot of cool things that people admire you for. But as an athlete, you also live a very selfish existence because you have to. How much I eat, how do I train, how do I sleep? Everything is about you all the time. We call it like the disease of me. And I was so excited to get into medicine because what it enabled me to do was step outside of the disease of me, and I have to worry about someone else, which was actually quite a beautiful thing for me. But I knew about being the best in the world. And on that day in medicine, what I realized is that it's one thing to be the best in the world, but it's completely another thing to be the best for the world. And in these last few years of the pandemic and what we've all had to go through, I've seen people that are absolutely both, inside of medicine, inside of any business. And I think the most high-functioning, best operating teams, you can be both. You can be the best in the world, but you can also be the best for the world.